Good evening, America. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the latest edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you, as always, from Washington, D.C., where we're tracking some breaking news, and we're going to break some news. Let me get you some breaking news up to speed right now. A federal appeals court has stopped the shutdown and the blocking, a federal judge's blocking of Alcatraz, the ICE detention center down in Florida. This is a major victory for the state of Florida. Its attorney general and governor secured that ruling just about an hour ago. We have all of the details over at justthenews.com. And when you wake up in the morning, you're going to have a lot more details. This time about what really went on with the auto pen and Joe Biden. For the first time, we're seeing documents produced from the National Archives that show that the Biden White House lawyers believe that Joe Biden had an obligation to personally sign pardons, that he may have designated decisions for signatures on things like legislation and pardons to other people. Didn't even show up in the room. No record of him being in the room when certain things were signed. This is explosive new documents. It's the first time anyone's going to make them public. We'll have them on the site when you wake up tomorrow morning, but we're going to keep you up to speed. Keep a close eye on that. These are bombshell documents. Even surprised me about what was really being discussed behind the scenes at the Biden White House. All of this dug out of the National Archives, and also good work by the White House counsel's office for President Trump, who has its own review of this ongoing and found some of these documents. Amanda, we're going to have all that tomorrow. Big deal. We got a great show today, and then tomorrow's show, we're going to be talking more about that very important issue of solving America's pharmaceutical processing crisis. Every day we're getting solutions in place since we raised the question. I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, and I love all of the solutions. I say three-pronged, but I think at this point we're at a five-pronged approach as far as solving that crisis. Because, John, you know, when it comes to these strategic ingredients for the SAPIER, the fact that Joe Biden let that place sit empty for his entire term.
Storeroom was empty.
It makes you wonder what he knew. Maybe he knew there wasn't going to be a pandemic during his term. Maybe he was just betting really, really hard on that and hoping that it wouldn't happen. But with respect to your story and your tease, I mean, this is something that so many of us have prognosticated about, that for most of his term, if not all of it, the people closest to Joe Biden knew that he was not necessarily capable cognitively of knowing what was actually happening. And to have his former press secretary, Jen Psaki, out there criticizing folks in this administration because President Trump is not in the public eye for 16 hours, oh my goodness, it's pretty rich.
He's either too lazy, too inept, or too unaware of what the Constitution and the law required, but it clearly concerned his staff in ways we don't know. These are debates that were going on we couldn't see. Now you're going to get to see him in the morning. All right, we're going to kick today's show off with an incredible discussion with someone who's been fighting the weaponization of government, which, by the way, expanded quite a bit under Joe Biden. Joining us now, our good friend, Andy Biggs. All right, joining us now, one of our great friends of this show. He represents the state of Arizona and is a leading candidate for governor there, too, Congressman Andy Biggs. Congressman, good to have you back on the show.
Thank you. Good to be with you. Hey, Amanda, John.
Yeah, good to have you on. I love what's going on right now. I think Americans are beginning to absorb just how much was in the first big, beautiful bill that changes things at the kitchen table. I'd like to get your sense. You're out in the campaign trail, working the circuit every day. You also have a good sense of what's going on in Congress. How are Americans starting to digest what they got in the America First agenda in the big, beautiful bill?
Well, they're feeling that the economy is getting a little bit better, and that really is the driving issue that is always on the top of people's minds is that. And then they're looking around and they're saying, well, what else is happening? Well, the border's secure. There are cities that were insecure, like D.C., that seem to be getting more secure. I've actually heard people say this that are on the other side of the aisle saying, he is at least keeping his promises. He promised he would do this, and that's what he's doing. And they associate virtually every action the president's taking, outside of some foreign affairs stuff, with the big, beautiful bill. Even if it's not related to the big, beautiful bill, everything is related to it in the minds of the public.
Yeah.
Sir, I want to ask you about law and order, because you are obviously in great support of these D.C. reform bills. You introduced those. And when it comes to extending the National Guard being here and eliminating cash bail, the cash bail thing, I've spoken to a lot of city leaders, blue city leaders across this country who support ending things like that, because they say that that is one of the foundations of the reasons for the crime in the city. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, so people don't realize that what these Soros DAs and other blue cities were doing is they were actually releasing people who'd been charged with a violent crime or had a violent criminal history that were charged for something else, and they were just releasing them, what we call OR, they on their own recognizance, or with very little bail at all, but mostly cashless. And so they would send them out there and allow them to get back out there, and they would do what they do is commit more crimes. And so when leaders, even in blue cities, like you say, Amanda, say, well, our problem was the cashless bail. It was the cashless bail because normally bail is to keep people who are a threat of flight or a threat to the community. You keep them locked away, and you accelerate the trial date in order so you don't keep them in too long, because that would be a violation of their constitutional rights. But they were letting these people out on the street, and they were returning to crimes and creating more victims. And so that's why I've got a bill to eliminate cashless bail in DC. And I'm hoping that our leadership gets that moving so we can get it out there and get it in place sooner rather than later.
Important stuff, and it's common sense stuff. The president's emergency authority will technically end at the end of the first 30 days for taking over the police department. I know you want to extend that as well. What are the sentiments inside of Congress? Can the Congress come behind the president, back him up, and give him some longevity so he can get the job of cleaning up the D.C. Capitol up completely done?
I wish I could say it was unanimous. I don't know if it's unanimous because there's always a few people. I'm never quite sure how they're going to vote. But by and large, so I've got a bill that does that. I know leadership is going to try to approach it maybe a different way. But the bottom line is the vast majority of Republicans in the House want to see this continued. And by the way, I wouldn't be surprised if you got some Democrats that have to vote for it too. And why is that? Because Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., has said she supports what Trump's doing and would favor an extension. In the meantime, the police union favors an extension. So this is one thing where I would guess you could get bipartisan support where at least a few Democrats will come in. So if we lose a few Republicans, which I hope we don't lose any, but if we were to lose some, I think the Democrats might actually help us get over the hump on that.
Speaking of Democrats, a big hearing today up on Capitol Hill that I would love to get your take on. Secretary Kennedy up there speaking about chronic disease, autism, a whole flurry of issues. And I noticed that the most irate members of Congress who were practically screaming at him, I went over to opensecrets.org, and I noticed that the ones who were the loudest are a lot of the ones who are getting the most money from Big Pharma. It's a little on the nose, isn't it?
It really was. I'm glad you did that research, Amanda, because I had it on between meetings and was watching bits and pieces of it, and I was astounded at how awful they were, and nasty, and wrong, and misinformed. Or if they weren't misinformed, they were basically doing it on purpose. But I thought Secretary Kennedy, I thought he was fighting a good fight and holding his own, but he wants to hold pharma accountable, which is not unreasonable. But these people that were attacking him, mostly from the left, were just unreasonable and irrational, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was a spectacle. There was another set of tense exchanges yesterday. I think you were at this hearing with Nigel Farage, good friend of mine. The state of free speech in the United Kingdom is such a warning sign to all of us in America. What were your big takeaways from yesterday's hearing?
Well, the first big takeaway, just on a personal note, is that nobody's better than Nigel Farage at putting people like Jamie Raskin and Hank Johnson in their place, and doing it with dignity and class and humor. Oh, he was fantastic. But I mean, the takeaway here is we're down that road a bit ourselves.
Right.
And the UK is really far down that road. We need the UK to come back to the values of the liberal West. And when I say liberal, I'm not talking about the left-wing crazies we have today, but I'm talking about the classical liberal West, which recognized the human rights of every individual. We're in danger of losing that. And I took away yesterday that more than ever, we have to do FISA reform. More than ever, we have to find out how government was weaponized to censor during the last couple of election cycles. where the government was weaponized to go after, threaten internet companies and telling them you got to take stuff down, or go back and take a good look at COVID and see what was happening there, because that was the root of authoritarianism. And thank goodness Donald Trump was elected in 2024. Otherwise, we'd be further down, and we'd be staring into the abyss of loss of civil rights like the UK is.
Yeah. I mean, further down is exactly where they are. Do you think that there's recourse? Because we are starting to see some protests with people, finally flying the flag of England and the Union Jack, which has been villainized by their own government for the last few years. They're finally getting out and doing something. Is it reversible?
I hope it is. I mean, Nigel seems to think it is, but don't forget how far down they are. They're so far down that they're arresting people for thoughts in their head that they don't even iterate. That they'd be standing there, they might be moving their lips like they're saying a prayer or something. They can be arrested for that, for mercy's sakes. This is the dangerous situation that they have. And I introduced yesterday probably a good 20 articles or more of what's going on in Europe, or excuse me, in the UK, with specific cases that are going on. And then the gentleman from Scotland, no, excuse me, he was from Ireland. The gentleman from Ireland, he had documented 84 cases where people, for as simple as I indicate, just by thoughts, that they were being arrested. And we could go on and on about where police personnel have said, we're going to come after you. I mean, and you had the comedian who was in Arizona when he put out a couple of very, very lightweight, in my opinion, trans jokes. He gets arrested by 5 armed police officers in the UK. And as Nigel said, if you know anything about the UK, they don't carry weapons unless they think somebody's a real danger. Then they have to go sign them out for police. And they had this going on. That's how far down they are. So is it reversible? Yes. But it's going to take the people of the UK to rise up and recognize their heritage and their rights and where they come from. They come from God, not from the country, not for the government. And if they do, then there's some chance to save it.
It'll be interesting to see if the State Department Human Rights Report starts to treat the United Kingdom a little bit differently based on what we've seen. I want to turn real quickly to our own things that we've learned because of the great work you did for so many years. We now know that innocent people were pursued relentlessly by the government here, and that in some cases, those who did the pursuit knew that the process itself was designed to be the punishment, to just bankrupt someone or to ruin their reputation so they couldn't come back and be a meaningful voice in Washington. Is it time for Congress or the president or someone to think about a fund that reimburses people who incurred enormous legal expenses or other expenses for what ultimately were false, not only false allegations, but false investigations?
Yeah, I mean, we really might need to look at that. And I know we're talking everybody from J6ers to face actors, and Russian hoax, people caught up in the Russian hoax investigations. When you start looking at what was happening, the weaponization, restitution may be in order, but it isn't just restitution anymore. I mean, like if you look at the Epstein victims, I didn't hear any one of them ask for restitution. What they want is transparency, clarity, and they don't want innocent people to be in trouble. They don't want the victims to be excoriated and revealed unless they want to be out there and transparent on that. But if you committed a crime, and they're going to put this list together, then you need to be held accountable. So I'm not sure restitution is the way necessarily, but I am pretty certain that you have to hold people accountable. In some of these situations, you've had people that were actually given promotions, they've been given bonuses or whatever, when they behaved, grossly inappropriately and violated the law. And was there suppression in some of these cases? I believe there probably was. And you got to get to the bottom of that. That's what I think most victims want. They want clarity, understanding, they want transparency, and they want someone to be held accountable.
Yeah. get their good name and reputation back. And it's something that's, I think, beginning to happen with all of the great disclosures we're getting from Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard. Of course, we got a lot of them in a much more difficult era to get them from you, sir. You played such an important role in unraveling a lot of those abuses in government. Great to have you on the show today, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, and never don't be afraid to take a tip of the hat yourself, because you, John, and Amanda, you guys did great work in this, and you continue to do great work, and I'm grateful for that.
I'm very honored by those words. Thank you, sir. We'll be catching up with you on the campaign trail soon. Thanks for joining us today. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll have Alabama's top law enforcement official, Attorney General, and U.S. Senate candidate now, Steve Marshall, to talk about his fight to protect parents' rights. We'll have that next right after these messages.